Simple is in, like it or not. Stories like JJK with incredibly complex power systems, fights, and analytical devices to try and break down exactly what's going on in the manga right now, or kind of going out of fashion. Stories like Kaiju number 8, Solo Leveling, and Dandadan are dominating in the anime world. And the one commonality that all three of these IP have is that their power systems are relatively simple. Whether it's unleashed combat power, the most basic MMORPG leveling system you've ever seen, or just kind of were psychic, overly complex and analytical power systems are becoming a thing of the past. And while there are some incredibly complex and beautiful power systems that are in ongoing manga or anime, like the power systems of the Lord of Mysteries or Witch Hat Atelier, unfortunately when it comes down to it, nowadays, simple is good. But that's not always a negative, especially in the universe that we're going to be talking about today, Gahiakuta. See, because while Gahiakuta's power system is relatively simple, it's not overtly simple. See, while many would believe that Gahiakuta's entire power system simply revolves around loving an object long enough that it gains powers, it's more complex than that in a really fun and perfect for this universe kind of way. In the same way that Kaiju number 8 is able to diversify its power system by introducing things like numbers weapons, Gahiakuta over the course of its manga actually sprinkles a couple additional bits of information inspired by other incredibly popular manga like Hunter x Hunter and Naruto to make a pretty fun and well-diversified power system. And thus today, I want to go over that power system, explain to you exactly what a giver is, how they use their vital instruments, how they make their vital instruments stronger, and so on and so forth. Also, you can watch Gahiakuta with as much knowledge in your brain as possible to maximize your enjoyment. So today, we're getting technical in the world of trash punk because today, we're talking New Gen's best new power system explained. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional Nick video, we can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We're on to the Forest of Death, and Sasuke and Orochimaru have begun their fated 1v1. So, if you've interacted with Gahiakuta in any way whatsoever, whether it be just watching the first 2 episodes of the anime or reading a little bit of the manga, you've probably heard a couple of key terms. Key terms like givers and cleaners and the vital instruments. But what do all these terms mean and how do they fit into each other? Well, let's start from the biggest and work our way to the smallest. The biggest catch-all term that you're going to see in Gahiakuta is the cleaners. Now, the cleaners are an organization that exists on the ground. The ground is just everywhere that's not the sphere where Rudo started his story. The sphere is the floating city that had the slums that Rudo was split off into, and then also the really nice white porcelain city where everyone threw away anything that was even remotely broken. So the cleaners are one of the biggest and most prominent groups on the ground, and pretty much their sole purpose on the ground is to exterminate trash beasts. But what exactly is a trash beast? I mean, we saw them in episode 2 of the anime, but how did they get made? What is their entire purpose, and how are they destroyed? Well, trash beasts are kind of what they sound like. They're beasts made out of trash, but how did they come into being? Well, thought. See, thought is the nen, or the chakra, or just the general life force of the Gahiakuta universe. It's a mysterious power source that has the ability to accumulate and turn into energy. Now, trash beasts are formed when trash is thrown down from the sphere to the ground. And this phenomenon of an endless amount of trash coming from the sphere and hitting the ground causes for thought to accumulate around that trash. Basically, every piece of trash, be it a banana peel or an old TV, interacted with humanity in some regard, be it for an incredibly short amount of time or for a relatively long amount of time. And thus, even though every single one of these pieces of trash is trash to those who are throwing it out, all of this garbage does interact with human thought, human energy. And therefore, when a mass amount of this garbage all comes together in one space, those residual pieces of thought that linger onto every single piece of this garbage come together, and when they finally hit a tipping point, they coalesce into a garbage beast or a trash beast. But because the trash beasts are beings made from not only trash, but also thought, only instruments also charged with the power of thought are able to destroy trash beasts. And thus, it doesn't matter if you fire a nuclear missile into a trash beast, as that nuclear missile has no thought, the trash beast will just come back together after it's been exploded. And thus, it's generally accepted that only vital instruments are able to destroy trash beasts. But who uses vital instruments? Well, givers. See, givers, also sometimes referred to as dependents by those who live on the ground, because of their dependency on their vital instruments, are people who have the ability to funnel thought into an object that they love and have had for a long time, turning it into a vital instrument. And thus these givers who have the ability to channel thought into an item, turning it into a vital instrument, have the ability to fight against trash beasts. And this is what makes Rudo, the main character of Gahiakuta, so incredibly unique. See, because while most, if not every single giver not named Rudo, only has the ability to funnel thought into one item, being able to only turn one thing into a vital instrument, and therefore only having one weapon to use in a battle against the trash beasts, Rudo, through the power of his vital instrument gloves, is actually able to funnel thought into anything he picks up, turning mundane things like a tire or a chain into vital instruments that he's able to use in combat against either people or trash beasts. This is why in the very beginning of episode 2, we see Rudo using a piece of sheet metal to cut down trash beasts. But because of this, to givers, their vital instrument is the most important thing in their lives. And while in order to be able to funnel thought into an item to turn it into a vital instrument in the first place, it already needs to be something important to said giver, a giver without their vital instrument is relatively powerless. And therefore, the best way to take a giver out of combat is to steal their vital instrument. However, just because a giver steals somebody else's vital instrument does not mean that that giver can now use their vital instrument. It's useless to them as well, but it does have the benefit of taking that other giver out of combat. Now, obviously, Rudo is the exception to this rule because Rudo can use basically anything as a vital instrument, but for 99.99999% of givers, stealing somebody else's vital instrument only has the effect of making that other person useless in combat. Now, becoming a giver isn't necessarily some rare thing on the ground. See, the concept of givers is actually something that very few people know about on the sphere. On the ground, almost everybody knows about the existence of the givers and how they get their powers. But why? Why is there this separation in knowledge between the sphere and the ground? Well, because thought, the energy source of this entire universe, actually comes from the ground. And therefore, the idea of thought-powered entities like vital instruments and trash beasts is something that's relatively exclusive to the ground. And this is why we don't see somebody like Rudo being able to turn objects in the sphere into vital instruments while he's still up there. And in actuality, that's not an ability that he gains until he lands in a dangerous zone on the ground, amongst piles of toxic trash and amongst a pack of trash beasts. Oh wait, though, Nick, then how did Rudo figure out how to pump thought into his gloves? I mean, sure, he's worn these gloves for a long time. Sure, he loves these gloves, but how did he figure it out? Well, before any giver is able to turn an object into a vital instrument, they need to undergo something known as an awakening. That is to say that anybody who wants to learn how to become a giver, and yes, anybody can become a giver, it like chakra in the Naruto universe or Nen in the Hunter x Hunter universe, is not some rare phenomena that only happens to a certain amount of people. Anybody is able to awaken to controlling the power of thought and turning it into anima. However, it requires an awakening process and some training. Okay, but how does this awakening process go? Well, unfortunately, it's kind of a long and arduous process that requires putting love and care into an object for a matter of years. Like me with these glasses, I've worn these glasses and kept these glasses clean for years. And therefore, over the course of those years, by applying love and care to these blue light glasses, I've been actually channeling anima into said glasses. Anima is the energy that truth becomes after it coalesces. And after the amount of love and care that I've given these glasses hits a threshold, it's able to become a vital instrument, and I myself become a giver. Thus, in moments of need, I'll be able to flush anima into these glasses and turn them into a vital instrument that, I don't know, allowed me to see through walls or something. But the process doesn't always have to be this arduous. Kind of like in Hunter x Hunter, there is a shortcut to becoming a giver. And that, like in Hunter x Hunter, is if a giver funnels anima energy into somebody trying to awaken to become a giver, that giver is able to essentially act as a catalyst to turn that person from a regular person into a giver in a much shorter timeline. This is similar to forced Nen awakenings in the Hunter x Hunter universe, where a Nen user is able to fire their Nen into somebody who can't use Nen to open all of their aura nodes simultaneously. However, in the Gahiakuta universe, there isn't the possibility that this person who's being forced into becoming a giver essentially could die. As in Hunter x Hunter, if somebody has their aura nodes forcefully opened, they could leak out all of their Nen and die if they don't figure out how to control their Nen and close their aura nodes. However, this kind of assisted awakening is rather rare in the Gahiakuta universe. Certainly a whole lot rarer than it is in the Hunter x Hunter universe. Now, when somebody does become a giver, while they are stuck with usually one vital instrument, instrument, that vital instrument is not stuck at the same level of power forever. See, if you'll remember, the way that somebody becomes a giver is simply by giving love and attention to an object over a long-ish amount of time. However, if a giver spends more time with their vital instrument and continues to care and love for it, the object will become more seasoned and its quality will improve. And the higher the quality of the vital instrument that a giver is using, the more powerful that vital instrument becomes. And therefore, it's usually older givers who have had more time with their vital instruments that have the most powerful vital instruments. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most powerful givers. See, because having a high quality vital instrument doesn't guarantee you power. See, because while your umbrella can be really hard and really sharp, every vital instrument, when turned into a vital instrument, also comes along with a certain set of powers. And those powers are a reflection of the experiences and ideologies of the givers using said vital instruments. And thus, if those powers don't necessarily align with how the giver is trying to fight, even though they have a high quality vital instrument, they may not be able to use it at the highest possible level. There's also the fact that some givers simply exist at a level below the quality of their vital instrument. Take Rudo, for example. His vital instrument is of incredible quality because he's had the gloves since he was a child. However, when he is a fledgling giver, he's not able to use the gloves at the highest possible level they could be used at in accordance with their quality because he's not used to being a giver and he doesn't know how to collect anima as well as other more seasoned givers. However, don't worry about Rudo, because even though the idea that his entire ability is to turn trash into vital instruments, and therefore would make a fair amount of sense that he'd be confused on how to use each and every single one of these new vital instruments that, mind you, all break after he's done using them, in actuality, by the time a giver is able to turn an object into a vital instrument, they actually should have enough understanding of the object to perfectly understand what abilities that object would have. And therefore, even if it's a giver's first time awakening a vital instrument, they should intrinsically understand what the abilities of this vital instrument should be. But quality and the powers that come along with a vital instrument are not the only things that control how powerful a vital instrument is. See, usually when a giver awakens a vital instrument, the name of the vital instrument is etched into the side of said instrument. And thus, when Engine, who gets introduced in episode 2 of Gahiakuta, awakens his umbrella from just an umbrella to a vital instrument, its name, Umbreaker, gets etched into the side of it. However, should a vital instrument not be given a name or even have its name removed, it'll greatly diminish not only the size but also the abilities of said vital instrument. Now, as to why people would want to do this, well, some people's vital instruments are too powerful to be used at full power, and as using vital instruments does come with some kind of recoil, as can be seen with Rudo using his vital instrument gloves too long and getting a nosebleed, the recoil of some insanely powerful vital instruments could lead to some pretty disastrous effects to their givers, and thus those vital instruments are only used in a limited capacity because the recoil would be too great if they were used at full capacity. Other givers know that they are so incredibly powerful that if they use their vital instruments at the fullness of their abilities, that any and all fights that they ever got into would be over basically before they started, and those givers like a good fight. And therefore, while not seeing a name on a vital instrument is pretty rare, it does happen. But the intricacies of vital instruments doesn't stop at names. Vital instruments can also fall into two separate categories, either being attacker vital instruments or defender vital instruments. And how these vital instruments fall into one of these two categories is dependent on how the giver used that object up until it became a vital instrument. Let's for a second assume that this watch was a diving watch. A lot of people who buy really fancy diving watches never take them on dives because the watch was expensive and they don't want to risk possibly losing this watch or having it take on water. However, if you wore your fancy diving watch every single day and you made sure that it was never broken and it always looked good and it ran on time, this watch would become a defender type vital instrument. As when it was just a regular object, you more focused on defending it than using it to the fullness of its abilities. However, if you dove with this fancy diving watch every single day and tried to maximize the capability of what this item can do, it would become an attacker type. Now, obviously, what camp your vital instrument falls into is going to dictate what kind of abilities that it has. Attacker vital instruments focus on offensive ability and can be used in combat, while defensive vital instruments cannot be used offensively in combat and really just can't be used in combat at all.
But Nick, I thought givers were specifically created to fight against trash beasts. What kind of non-combative abilities would a vital instrument need?
Well, yes, the vast majority of givers do fight against trash beasts in an offensive capacity, and some defensive type givers do find themselves in combat, however more in a support role than an offensive attacking role. However, givers that battle against trash beasts are not the only kind of givers. There's actually a group of givers on the ground called the Vianders who specialize in cooking. And really the only reason that the ground has a stable supply of food, even though the entire earth is littered with toxic trash, is because of the Vianders and their work. But even that is not all there is to vital instruments, as the true last thing that we need to talk about when talking about vital instruments is the idea of succession. See, let's flash back to this potential diving watch. If I received this diving watch from my father, who received this diving watch from his father, and therefore my grandfather, this would be a kind of family heirloom that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. Because this watch has been loved and taken care of for so incredibly long, this would essentially allow the thought of several different givers from several different generations to all flow into this one object, making this vital instrument uniquely strong. Now, those who receive succession vital instruments are usually referred to as natural givers, capable of using the abilities of their vital instrument right away on account of the fact that it's already filled with the anima of previous generations, and thus succession vital instruments are some of the strongest that you see in the Gahiakuta universe. Okay, Nick, but at the very beginning of this video, you said you were going to start as wide as possible and work your way down to a fine tip point. But while you opened this video talking about the cleaners, I still don't fully understand what the cleaners are. Are all the cleaners givers? Is the term cleaner synonymous with giver? And the answer is no. Well, at least kind of no. See, like we touched on earlier, the cleaners are one of the most prominent organizations on the ground. And while by and large the cleaners are made up out of givers, and the cleaners' key purpose is to exterminate trash beasts using their vital instruments, not every member of the cleaners is a giver. In fact, within the confines of the cleaners, there is a subsection of members called supporters. Ordinary humans who volunteer their strengths, whether it be their literal strength, the handling of weapons, so on or so forth, to support givers in their battles against trash beasts. And in fact, by and large, supporters are the biggest faction within the cleaners, with oftentimes 5 supporters being assigned to one giver to go out on a mission. However, in the Gahiakuta story itself, we're introduced to a whole lot more givers than we are supporters, just because givers are more interesting, which sometimes makes it hard to remember that there are way more supporters than givers in the cleaners. And with that, that's basically everything you need to know about not only the factions of Gahiakuta, but also the power system to enjoy this anime to its fullest. This is one of the most unique mangas that's dropped in years, and I absolutely adore it. It's getting the love that I believed Sabaki Bisco deserved, and honestly, I'm just happy for that fact. So if you guys have any questions about Gahiakuta or want to see me do any other Gahiakuta videos, like all vital instruments ranked or all givers ranked, let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go try and figure out why these aren't letting me see through walls yet.